Welcome back to the Poor Sports Podcast. This is Casey McLean. I'm working on the lighting situation, by the way. I know it looks like I'm being obscured from a detective show. Let's see if I can do at least something with the camera to solve some of this problem. It got worse, right? There we go. A little bit brighter on the camera there. Yeah, how's it going? It's a week of. We're in a tough period of sports in Seattle right now because there's no. I mean, obviously, there's no Sonics basketball, which we're going to find out how aware of that people are in a clip that I'm going to show. Yeah, and so it's like the draft and NFL free agency is upcoming and spring training, but it's a lot of speculation if you're a sports fan in Seattle. And, luckily the Washington Huskies basketball team is making it very valuable to be a devout Seattle sports fan. Yeah, it's a rough stretch. This is always the roughest stretch as a Seattle sports fan. I had a good weekend. I got to work with this guy Chad Daniels. By the way, if you don't know who Chad Daniels is, he's one of the best comics working. He would be a lot of your favorite comics' favorite comic. Also, am I super loud? It feels like I'm super loud. He's a comics comic, a guy I've wanted to work with since I started comedy, and I got to work with him at Tacoma Comedy Club, which was a great time, very fun time. Check out, he's got a special called Empty Nester and another one that's on Netflix, and he's got a couple on YouTube and a bunch of great albums. I actually had my first interaction of the weekend was a little bit risky because several years ago, a friend of mine had let me borrow Chad Daniels' album. I think this was before I started doing comedy. I was trying to be funny on the internet or whatever, but I was I had it in my pickup truck, and my truck got broken into, and they stole. I had my grandpa had just died, and there was a bunch of sympathy cards in my and I don't think any of them had money in them. I've run this through my mind. I don't know if people give money in sympathy cards, but the thief went through every single card. So I do not connect money to any sentiment or sentimentality. So I didn't even think to look in these sympathy cards. I got half of the sympathy cards for my grandpa. I have no knowledge of if there was another half, who got the other half, whatever. Again, I don't know if there was money in them or not. The thief got it, if there was. They had gone through those. I had a piece of audio recording equipment behind my seat. The one thing they left in the car, and it was sitting on the passenger seat, was Chad Daniels' CD. I think it's called Footsteps on the Moon. Is that right? First interaction was hey man, do you remember this tweet that I tweeted at you 10 years ago? And he's like, I do remember that tweet, actually. Yeah, it was a pretty funny time. My dog is barking quite aggressively right now, which usually means absolutely nothing. We got motion at the porch. Let's see what's going on at the porch. Do we have to step away for a moment? Ooh, we got some inspector guys here. Let's see. Can I ride them out? Are they gonna come? This is good live pod. I hate answering the door. I'm in the middle of something. In the middle of a meeting, we'll call this. All right, I gotta go down. We're gonna pause for a moment. All right, we're back. Oh my God! Does Tacoma's gas service? Do they not know? Do they not know about this podcast? Are they not one of the single digits people that listens on a regular basis? Also embarrassing how winded I am running up and down the stairs. Anyway, so Chad Daniels, great comic. Go check him out. I don't know where I'm at. I don't know where I'm at on this whole podcast. Anyway, Mariners spring training started, and I'll tell you, for the second time in a couple of years, I've started listening to a lot of local sports radio recently, and the reason for that is I have kids that understand words, and so comedy podcasts are, it turns out, not great for those kids. And I was listening to some podcast, and we were pulling up to daycare, and my daughter was like, "What does motherfucker mean?" And I was like, we're like, I don't even have enough time to stop. I'm like, just please don't say this at daycare. Please don't say it at daycare. So I've tried to curb the profanity diet on the drive, and so I've been listening to local sports radio, and it's been good, I'll say. The one that I listened to, which I have no... if the other station had a better morning show, I would listen to that. I listen to Brock and Salk. I like them fine, but I'm not I'm not brand loyal. The two things that stuck out for me, first off, Brock Heward got hit by a baseball at spring training, like live on video. I don't listen on the actual radio, by the way. I'm a full-fledged I'm trying to be Gen Z so bad. I listen on YouTube. One, I've said this before, here's my tip. If the radio station you like streams on the internet, the audio quality will be better. That's the truth. Also, you get video, which I don't really care about, but it was funny to be like, oh shit, I'm like listening to this and he gets hit by a baseball, and you're like, oh, I can go like review the video. I can go watch the video right now. So I went and watched it, and yeah, he got hit by a baseball. He hit by a foul ball at spring training. Ryan Bliss taking reps at third base. Andres Munoz throwing a new changeup. I'm not reporting this information. I'm hearing those reports and just imagining what that looks like. Supposedly, there's some comments, maybe from Logan Gilbert, from somebody that the Munoz changeup is like just a really nasty pitch. I'm gonna zoom this camera out so you don't have to be this far up on my fat face. That it's a great, that it's gonna be a great offering. I'm gonna talk about Andres Munoz's his repertoire and how this might fit into it a little bit, and Ryan Bliss, what him playing third base would look like, and why that I think solves a problem for the Mariners if he can play third base. So let's talk about that in a moment. But the first thing, and then we're gonna do the mock drafts. We did that last time. It's supposed to be mock draft Monday. Last time it was mock draft Tuesday. And you know what I'm dreading the most about this is trying to edit out the silence when Puget Sound Energy showed up to my house and I'm fucking on my phone watching them. That's not good podcasting. And then I go down and talk to them, and they're just like, oh, we just have a trainee. We wanted to let you know. That's what it was, by the way. That's why they kept pounding on my door and making my dog bark, is because they wanted to let me know that a trainee was here checking my meter. What, is he going to blow my house up? What am I going to do? Why do I care about a trainee? He's not a dentist. It's not like a dental college or something. I don't know. Leave me alone. Every now and then I'm like, let me be off the grid, but the internet is much slower off the grid. You probably would not be able to get this brilliant podcast were I to be truly off the grid. Anyway, there was a controversial city hall meeting. Mayor Bruce Harrell went up to a podium. I don't necessarily know all the context to this. I'll tell you that, because I'm not like, I don't really care about, I'm not like super clued into politics in general, but I certainly like Seattle City Council stuff. I don't care about at all. Let's see what this comment says. Bob Springer says, please tell me the rest of the family is sitting in the dark while you have just enough gas in the generator for your show. That's exactly right. Actually, that's exactly right. They're not only the dark, but the cold. It is also very funny that it's not even, I don't even have internet, by the way. I'm using the last bits of data. the last drops of data that we have to hotspot into this podcast. I saw Bob Springer last night. Shout out to you, Bob Springer, at the Roastamania show at Tacoma Comedy Club, which is another fun show that I did this weekend, by the way. Roasted the shit out of some friends of mine. My favorite stuff, as is often the case on a roast show, was actually said backstage, but it was pretty brutal on stage. So those are really fun shows. I'll probably have video coming out of that at some point soon, but for now, you'll just have to imagine how brutal it was. And then just when I put out the video, just imagine how much more brutal it possibly could have been backstage. Okay, so we're gonna watch Bruce Harrell because so he comes out in this meeting, and people hate Bruce Harrell. I you know what? I'm never gonna stop anyone from hating any politician. I'm never gonna tell you that any of these guys are any good, because they're all trash. It's not Bruce Harrell. It's not Donald Trump. It's not JD Vance. It's not Joe Biden. They're all trash, in my opinion. But here's Bruce Harrell, and I'm gonna, yeah.
Right now.
Oh, come on, Brute. Let's get this on the right so it's not echoing. I hope you guys can hear this. Please let me know if you can't hear it.
Right now, at this moment, I have an announcement to make.
So for those of you that are listening, Bruce Harrell pulls out a basketball and starts playing with a basketball. Ooh, can we get what's written on that basketball? Can we get a sleuth in to see what was written on that basketball? By the way, it's like a Baden basketball. It's not, is it Baden or Baden? I used to work for a company that made their boxes. It's not like an NBA, like an official NBA basketball. I know you can't tell that from where the people are cheering, but so he pulls out this basketball, starts spinning it in his hand.
I'm just kidding. I got.
So he starts laughing. People start booing. This press conference has become the source of a lot of. It almost made me do a podcast last Thursday or Friday. I wasn't going to do it, and then I was like, "Oh my god, this is too funny to not show." And then, I look at the smile on his face. By the way, look at the smile on Bruce Harrell's face. The discourse about it after has been funny in a couple ways. One, we found out that Bruce Harrell apparently has a comedy writing team, which is very funny. It makes me wonder, because I know some comedians who have kind of gotten out of comedy and closer to politics. It makes me wonder if it's them, and if it's them, it's just so funny to me to watch a joke bomb once again. The pipeline from comedy to politics is one of the most pathetic pipelines in the world, in my opinion. I'm now thinking about the people that I know who might think that's about them, and it's not about you. The people who that's about do not watch this podcast. I can guarantee that. First off, let me on the team, Bruce. And I'm going to say this. I'm going to give Bruce a little credit. This is funny. This is funny to go to a city council meeting where the city, some segments of the city are clamoring for a new NBA team, and to pull out a basketball and then go, psych, I'm just kidding. It is very funny. It is extremely distasteful, which, if I view this through the lens of comedy, I don't care about that. If I allow myself to be emotionally hurt by what Bruce Harrell did with a basketball at a city council meeting, yeah, absolutely, I could be mad at him. But this is fun. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen a Seattle politician do, frankly. I don't know. I guess did John Curley run for mayor at some? I don't know who the competition is, but yeah, it's absolutely funny. You're wrong if you don't think it's funny. Yeah, could it upset people? Obviously. Many of the best comedians. Bruce Harrell, now one of them. He's the other Bruce in Bruce, by the way. It's funny. I honestly don't. I'm sure people will disagree with me. I laughed the moment I saw it. I was like, this is the funniest. This is so funny. Yeah, so good job, Bruce Harrell. I like it. Let me on the comedy writing staff. I could get you in a lot more trouble than this, probably. Oh, guts it took to this is a time when I wish, because I actually found out about it because former co-host Alex Akita tweeted about it, and this would have been such a great topic for him and I to cover. All right, I want to talk about the Mariners stuff before we get into the mock draft. And the combine is this week, I believe, so I will actually have opinions that are based on athletic numbers at least, not just other people's shitty scouting reports. But is it this week? Is the combine this week? I think it's this week. Hang on. NFL Combine. Yeah. Thursday, February 27th through Sunday, March 2nd. So by the time the next podcast comes out, unless I do one on Thursday, which is probably unlikely, this week there will have been the NFL Combine. So before we get into that, I want to talk about those two Mariners things. Ryan Bliss playing third base, Andres Munoz adding a changeup to his repertoire. We'll start with Ryan Bliss. Early reports are that Dylan Moore is going to get a chance to win the starting second baseman job. And if you remember earlier in the offseason when we were talking about potential free agents and the guys that had been predicted to be targets for the Mariners, turns out none of those guys, none of the guys in the top 50 were Mariners targets in any serious way. And that might not be completely true, but I don't think that any of them gave a serious look to the Mariners at the very minimum. Gleyber Torres was the guy that kept getting brought up, and I said, I mean, Dylan Moore is already better than Gleyber Torres. We don't need any can play multiple positions. There's no need to bring Gleyber Torres to Seattle. And then they decided that I would have liked the second baseman. They decided that they actually were going to give him a shot to win the starting job, which I admire. It's going to be Dylan Moore is, what is he? Dylan Moore's got to be like late 20s. He's not 30 yet, is he? Oh shit, 32. I'm wrong. Yeah, so first off, he's not that long for baseball, and the Mariners have a bunch of middle infielders coming up the pipeline. Like Dylan Moore's time in Seattle is probably not going to be that long anyway, and he probably is going to get displaced. I mean, it's not like he's going to be the Mariners starting second baseman for the next 10 years. But he is a guy, I will say this, he's got essentially 3 full seasons worth of plate appearances. Probably not quite, and he's been worth 8.5 wins above replacement. That's a guy, that's a 2.5 win a year player who has just been bouncing around position to position, and I think Dylan Moore is a very valuable piece, and I've seen a lot of people say stuff like, well, his value is in his versatility. He is valuable. He's more valuable because he's versatile, but he's also slightly better than league average hitter and a good fielder at second base. Like this is a guy who does make sense as a starting second baseman. It's not my first choice. I don't like the idea of taking a guy who is like a super utility player and then confining him to one position. I agree with those people on that. But what I will say is, it's not like there's going to be some huge drop-off in production because you go from Jorge Polanco, who is obviously back in Seattle, but the expectation of Jorge Polanco in 2024 was probably the same expectation you'll have for Dylan Moore in 2025, and it does take away a little bit of the versatility that the team had, right? Like there's Dylan Moore was a very good guy to have to play all 3 infield spots, to play an outfield spot. And that is very valuable, but I'm not, that part doesn't worry me as much, especially because you have the whole farm system is full. It's of top middle infield prospects. He's not going to be there for long. He can go back to that utility role very quickly, but in the short term, if Dylan Moore wins the second base job, Ryan Bliss playing third base, to me, solves that problem, and it also puts pressure on the team to make a decision, to make a determination early on whether, because you can't really have, my opinion, it creates a roster problem if your bench is Mitch Haniger, Mitch Garver, Dominique Canzone. Those are 3 DHs, essentially. Garver will be your backup catcher, which I don't really love that either, by the way. But having that much dead weight, having these DH-only guys, and I'm sure one of these guys, there will be a platoon at DH with those guys, and they'll get plenty of time at DH, more time than they deserve. But to make a decision early on those guys, because Ryan Bliss, frankly, as a bench player, especially if you're able to let him play multiple positions, he came to the Mariners as a second baseman by definition, but he's played actually in Tacoma. He played a lot of shortstop, more shortstop than second base. If he can also play third base, and he played a little bit of outfield in the minors also, if he can play 4 positions, he's more valuable than Mitch Haniger, even if Mitch Haniger bounces back and is like a league average hitter. And even if Bliss is an 80 WRC plus guy, by the way, in short time, Bliss was like a league average hitter last year and played multiple positions last year. Having a guy that can play quality defense at 3 or 4 positions, that can pinch run, that isn't just like an absolute black hole offensively, like Haniger might be, like Garver might be. I've some faith that Dominic Canzone isn't going to just absolutely crater. That guy's very valuable. That to me, that it's nearly as complimentary a piece as Dylan Moore was. And especially, by the way, as there's all this conversation about the Mariners and small ball and all that stuff, and you look at you got to be a little bit worried. Bliss in Tacoma was like a reasonable strikeout rate guy with a high walk rate, and then got on base and stole bases, and that's great. You want that. In the majors, he struck out a lot and didn't walk as much. There was a stretch where he walked a ton right at the very beginning of his stint with the Mariners, but he has not walked like he walked in the minors, which is to be expected. These are the highest level pitchers in baseball. He is not a power hitter. So in the minors, you get these guys that like have a harder time throwing strikes. In the majors, most guys can throw strikes, and they're not scared to throw strikes to a guy that can't hit the ball out of the ballpark or that doesn't hit the ball out of the ballpark very often. It's not surprising that Bliss's strikeout and walk rates are so much different and are so inverse on like the percentile spectrum to where they were in the minors because of his batted ball profile. That being said, if he can be anything close to an average hitter and play 3 positions, again, way more valuable than any of those 3 guys that should be DHs only, pretty much. And the last thing is Andres Munoz's his changeup. And Munoz is a very good pitcher, but I think like not incredibly unique. His story is not incredibly unique among closers because, and I'm going off memory, so this is not going to be like a perfect representation of. But I many years ago, I remember doing a little bit of research on pitch types and like swinging strike rates and stuff like that. And the highest swinging strike rate to like-handed and opposite-handed batters, I believe the highest swinging strike rate is on a slider. It might not be true anymore, or at least on commonly thrown pitches. I imagine there was a stretch where like the split finger fastball kind of went out of fashion, and the now it's back a little bit, and maybe that's not completely true anymore, but the slider was like a big swing and miss pitch, but it was also the pitch that had the largest gap in platoon splits, meaning how hard it is to hit a right-handed slider as a right-handed hitter. It was the largest gap to how easy it was as a left-handed hitter. Still a super high swing and strike rate. Also, a lot of power and a lot of quality contact from opposite-handed hitters. And Munoz is a classic guy. These are classic closer. This is a classic closer repertoire, which is fastball, basically four-seam fastball, two-seam fastball. Some of them don't even have a two-seam fastball and a slider. Fastball slider is like classic reliever material. This guy is going to become a reliever if the only good pitches he has are fastball slider. Used to be you could hide those guys as one-out dudes, like guys that pitch now, obviously with the innings limit or whatever it is, the minimum batters faced rule. It's a little bit different, but I do want to talk about, so Munoz last year, his weighted on base average, which is not like a, it's not a park adjusted stat, I don't believe. Is that right? I don't think it's park adjusted. No, it's not park adjusted. Weighted on base is like essentially, is this right? I think it's the like run value per plate appearance. Anyway, against lefties, 262, which is not terrible, by the way, and 208 against righties. Here's a kind of more severe split that I just noticed and I think is interesting. 124 weighted on base average at home, 331 weighted on base average on the road, which is actually, I think 331, we're getting into like a little worse than average. I want to say average, it floats around like 315. Now the question is that because he doesn't have a changeup? Is he actually that ineffective against lefties? And I understand why it would seem like he would be. He's got the exact repertoire of a guy you would be worried about. I do think that the lefty-righty platoon splits are a little fluky for 2024. His career weighted on base average against lefties was 255 and 245 against righties. So he's actually pretty close to even on his platoon splits. But again, where he really has struggled is 202 weighted on base average at home. He's played he's played, hold on. Home is going to be, Jesus, get it together, Casey. So he played a little bit in San Diego, which is going to have a similar park effect to Seattle. I don't know if it was as extreme, but the majority of his career he's pitched in Seattle. And yeah, pitchers are better. Mariners pitchers are better in Seattle than they are away from Seattle. This isn't news. This isn't surprising. So the changeup is not bad. There's nothing bad about Andres Munoz learning a changeup. I don't know that it's going to have this drastic effect on how effective he is against lefties, because he's already pretty goddamn effective against lefties. But what it might do, hopefully, is when he's on the road, keep some balls in the ballpark instead of throwing this slider to opposing left-handed batters. I guess. I don't know. Is that really the problem? Let's take a quick look. I did have the splits up. I recognize if you're watching, I'm not showing them on the screen because I'm all set up for this mock draft. But let's see. Yeah, so I mean, he gave up 4 home runs to lefties and 2 to righties. This isn't like so drastic. It's certainly in the realm of like, it could have potentially been luck. I'm not worried about Andres Munoz against lefties, is what I'm saying. With or without this changeup. If this changeup story is true and his changeup is actually very good and he develops a third pitch, there's no harm in that. I don't think he needed it though. So it is a story. Who cares? I mean, I guess I can't be mad at anyone for doing something that nobody cares about, because I'm about to force you to watch this mock draft. There's not a bunch of Seahawks news right now. There will be. We'll talk about the combine a lot, and everyone's gonna hate it. But for now, we are back to Mock Draft Monday. Did I give this thing a title. Oh shit! I forgot. This is the title that I gave it on Friday. NFL salary cap increase, Geno extension prediction, and Bruce Harrell joke. That's how let's talk about those things real quick. Actually, I forgot about those. The NFL salary cap increased, and it gets every time this happens, it seems like the Seahawks are in a position where it's like it gives them a small amount of room to breathe, and people are like, well, it's actually more meaningful for the Seahawks. No, I mean, yes. First off, I think it might just barely or doesn't even quite get them to out of salary cap problems right now. That's, you know, the other thing is every other, like, where they're ranked is really what matters. Where they're ranked in terms of spending power. And they're at the bottom of the league right now in spending power. They have to get rid of players and take on dead cap in future years to get spending power right now. They are borrowing against future years to bring in players right now. Is that the right thing to do right now? It probably is. Because at some point, this team is going to be starting to develop a new young quarterback. And at that point, you got to start, saving up some cap space to roll over into the years when you can really expect to be competitive. Right now, you're talking about a closing window. You're talking about what's the most you can get out of Geno Smith and this iteration of the Seahawks. And if they want to do that for the next 1 or 2 years, like really kind of sell out and try to acquire talent to make this team a real contender in 2025, 2026, that's the way you got to do it. That's the only choice. Now, if there comes a point where they need to quote unquote rebuild, yeah, I don't think that they should be pushing a bunch of dead cap money into the years when you'd hope that you're developing a young quarterback and that guy's on a cheap salary. But yeah. Also, Geno Smith's, I'm curious to see what will happen. Here's my guess. So Geno Smith's base, like annual average value, was $25 million. I think it's going to be like, is it 30? It would have been $6 million more than it would have been, but I think it's like, what is it, 43 million? I think it's 44.5 million next year. I know that's really high. And I will say it does give Geno Smith a fair amount of leverage in negotiations because the Seahawks are kind of stuck a little bit between a rock and a hard place if they genuinely want Geno to play next year. The question is, I've seen the conversation float around about Geno getting $45 million a year for 3 years or whatever. I don't think there's any way that's going to happen. I think the minimum he will get if he is extended by the Seahawks is Baker Mayfield, who I believe got a 3-year, $100 million contract. So 33.33 infinity or continued or whatever they say. 3 years, $100 million. And what was Derek Carr? I think Derek Carr was 4,160. Is that right? So 4,150. So yeah, $37.5 million a year. I think that's the range. Somewhere between. I think it's in the range of those contracts. So could I see a 2-year, $70 million extension that takes a bunch of money out of 2025 and moves backloads it on that contract? Sure. But Geno Smith right now, it's an uncertain market if Geno Smith leaves. And so that's my prediction is I could see 2 years, $70 million. I could see that. 2 years, $75 million, whatever. I don't think he's getting more than 2 years added to that deal. And I don't think, and if he does, I think those last years are probably going to be those like weird void years to do a bunch of other cap manipulation. And I don't think he's going to exceed $40 million. I just don't think that's, I don't think the market values Geno Smith that way. And if they do, frankly, let him walk then. I like Geno Smith. I'm not going to be unhappy if he's the quarterback for the Seahawks for the next 2 years, next 3 years maybe. But yeah, I'm not giving that dude $50 million a year if I'm the Seahawks GM. Anyway, okay. Get into this mock draft. This is the PFF one. I listened to the episode last week and I said I was going to explain why I like the PFF one and the mock draft database one. And then I did absolutely zero explanation of why I like those two. And the reason I like those two is because I think PFF is, and you can be mad about the grades that they give, and you can disagree with the results that they give, but I think their process is the most transparent and the most objective. Are they perfect? No. I do think that, like, if you're a fan who doesn't grind tape, as I've complained about many times since last week, and I did last week also, it's the best shorthand you have available. It's the best way to, like, instantly evaluate, because football is outside of, like, and these aren't even, like, perfect, but, like, quarterback sacks are kind of an independent stat, but they do still require, like, a secondary that's good enough to stop a quarterback from releasing the ball immediately. Complementary defensive linemen to not allow you to be double teamed. Like, those might be an individual stat. Quarterback stuff is probably the most, or like, I guess what I mean is like a predictive individual stat. I think that quarterback stuff's pretty good, but you still have to have good receivers and a good offensive line and all the crap. Everything in football is so interdependent. So if you just want a shorthand for a guy who plays a position that doesn't put up those two stats, basically, I'm going to trust a team of qualified scouts aggregated across a whole year more than I'm going to trust, like, certainly any network that broadcasts NFL games. They're compromised. They're biased. And there's good apples. I mean, there's good people at those places. But, like, I'm going to trust the wisdom of the crowd and the aggregation of data more than I trust I'm trying to even think of someone to denigrate. I don't got anyone. My point is, the reason I like these two things is because they both deal with the wisdom of the crowd. PFF, it's a team of scouts. NFL mock draft database is the world / those same media people, but nobody has a huge outsized impact, and it's just aggregating data, and I think that's, if not the most accurate, like, demonstrably and empirically, it makes the most sense to me. So let's do this PFF for the Seahawks. We'll go 7 rounds. I'm going to set it to slow. We can speed it up later. I'm going to leave the board as they have it. Again, I said this last week. I'll say it again. We're going to deal with these drafts as they sit, not how I think they'll actually go. And I'm not a guy I don't have a big board. I'm going to probably try to put together a list of like 40 or 50 college players that I like a lot. But that doesn't mean that I think that the Seahawks should draft those guys in the first round. It means that, like, where they are round appropriate, they're guys that I like. Quinn Ewers is a guy that I'm going to like. Everyone seems to hate Quinn Ewers. I think he's really interesting. And if I was going to make a player comp, by the way, and I did vet this through someone who I trust their opinion a little bit. If I was going to make a player comp for Quinn Ewers, it would be Geno Smith. I think he compares pretty decently to Geno Smith. A guy with some athleticism, with an arm that people love, super highly recruited prospect, had some kind of like, what would you say? Like, he doesn't show up in the big moment all the time, had some questions about his devotion to football and blah, 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 blah. All the things that people said about Geno Smith coming out. They say similar stuff about Quinn Ewers. If I had my choice in Quinn Ewers' life, I probably would have wanted him to stay in college for another year. Geno Smith slipped to the second round. there's talk of Quinn Ewers going like 4th or 5th round. The one caveat I would give to that is Quinn Ewers probably had an unlimited amount of NIL money and offers from colleges. The fact that he stayed in the draft makes me think that somebody reliable has told him that he's not going to be like a late day 3 pick. That all of these projections that have him going as late as like the 5th or 6th round, they're wrong. I think he's going to get picked much higher than people think. I would be thrilled if the Seahawks got him in the 3rd round. I have a suspicion he's not going to make it into the 3rd round. That's one of my guys. That's the kind of guy that that's like, yeah. So I'll make those impassioned arguments as we get to the. I'm also not going to make trades. I said this last week. Maybe in a future edition of this, I'll make a trade. And feel free, by the way, these services, they give you a grade at the end, which is fine. Feel free to grade me in real time if you'd like to in the chat. All right, so the Titans, I think, have been taking Cam Ward mostly. They took Cam Ward here. That's fine. I'm going Abdul Carter. Yeah, I assume. Being at the top of this draft, like I said last week, it would scare me because there's not an obvious blue chip prospect. The two guys, like I think Ted McMillan and Mason Graham are the two guys I would feel the most comfortable drafting. And I don't know if I really like getting those guys at that spot. Oh, I'm a big Luther Burden guy. Luther Burden, not available anymore. He was taken in this draft. I'd be happy if he fell to the Seahawks for some reason. I would be happy with them drafting Luther Burden. I like these guys, these receivers now that are like 6 feet tall, 200 pounds, built like running backs. I think that's my long-term conspiracy theory. All right, so we have similar options to last time. It does look like, I don't know, when does PFF update their rankings? Because Jihad Campbell was, I think, 29th. They must do it on Sundays because I think he was 29th the other day. And he's gotten into the 2nd round most of the time I've been doing these. And now he's kind of catching up to the more like hip projections have him at, which is a 1st round pick. I don't like the Seahawks drafting a linebacker with this 1st pick. I know that I guess a lot of that will depend on if Ernest Jones re-signs or not. I just don't think they value, or the value's not even the right thing, because I do think they value linebacker. They spent between Terrell Dodson and Jerome Baker last year, they spent a decent amount of money in the offseason at the linebacker position, and they were I think would have been willing to draft someone in the 3rd round for sure if the right guy fell to them. Junior Colson, I think, being the guy that everyone was hoping for, the former Michigan linebacker that he ended up getting drafted by San Diego, right? I don't think they're going to draft Jihad Campbell. I'll say Kenneth Grant. I'll say the same thing I said about him last week. He's an athletic nose tackle, a guy that's not going to disappear and wilt if it's not a rundown. He's a guy that you can probably play 2.5 or 3 downs, which for a guy that's 340 plus pounds, pretty unique. Those are usually 1st and 2nd down guys, 1st and 2nd and medium to short, like run situation guys. And the Seahawks have talked. I mean, obviously they've talked a lot about building a run wall, and I'm not trying to discount that as something that they are certainly interested in. I'm tempted to take Kenneth Grant here. In my dream, I think the Seahawks would draft an offensive lineman who could play guard this year and take over for Charles Cross if he leaves next year, which I said last week also. So I am torn personally between, I think last week I took Armand Membu. I think Kelvin Banks was gone and Kenneth may or may not have been gone. The fact that Grant fell to here, I'm taking Grant. He's a unique player in this draft. There's not a lot of these guys available in the draft anymore. Tavondre Sweat last year, I think he would have, if the Seahawks somehow, if he fell to their 3rd round pick, I think they would have been interested in him. Jonathan Hankins is not necessarily this guy. Like, he's a big body, he's a nose tackle, but I don't think he's their contract, and I don't think he's to be expected to be in the long-term plans. I want to say he's like mid-30s. We could have seen the last of Jonathan Hankins. I'm drafting Kenneth Grant. I will say It's easy to be drawn to guys with that Michigan M next to their name, knowing that Mike McDonald coached there. But I did. I was listening to my buddy Dan Vian's podcast this weekend, and he pointed out that he did not play for McDonald at Michigan. I don't think that's been a big part of my calculus, but I did not know that until then. So I'm just acknowledging first, and also Dan just moved to Arizona, and he's gonna have like the next 3 or 4 months. I think he's gonna be doing daily podcasts. Go check that out. Seahawks Forever. You might see me over there at some point. We've talked about it. We're in negotiations, and by negotiations I mean he has to remember that I want to do his podcast, and that he has expressed interest in me doing his podcast also. So, I didn't even realize this. In this mock draft, Shedeur Sanders fell to the second round. That's interesting. There was a problem with the PFF mocks early on, I think, because they're not high on Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders or any quarterback for that matter. And those guys kept falling to the late first round or early second round, and that's just probably not what's going to happen. I don't think he gets past Las Vegas. The ties to Tom Brady, unless that's a full misread by everybody around. I don't think he gets past, I think they're at 6, but it's interesting to see him fall past New York. Let's go back up and take a look at what happened in the first round there. So New York takes Travis Hunter. That's the guy I'd be the most scared of. It's possible that we see Shedeur Sanders fall in a kind of Aaron Rodgers-esque, Jordan Love-esque descent down the first. And I don't think he's going to, like I said, I think there's going to be 3 quarterbacks. I said this last week. There's going to be 3 quarterbacks taken in the first round. If there was an even money bet on that, I would take that bet. Also, if there's, I got to figure out, I got to look at my, I'm going to try to be more of a degenerate gambler next year, and I did not do a very good job of it this year. So, okay. So now this same guy, Jihad Campbell, ranked 12th by PFF, but this is a thing that happens. You may not really know this, but when they do these rankings, it takes a minute to calibrate. It might be that that PFF is a bad one to do on a Monday if they're updating it. Takes them a little bit of time to calibrate and have these guys go off the board as early as they should. So Jihad Campbell, his most common, or his average draft position is 38.8, but that's some combination of before they updated the rankings and after they updated the rankings, and he's ranked 12th. And if Jihad Campbell falls to the Seahawks at 50, I think he's would be high on their board. So now I'm stuck in this kind of unenviable spot where I have to make a decision. Are we going to go off of what is on the board or what is realistic? And I'm going to go off of what's on the board. I do want to take a look at the quarterbacks, where they have the quarterbacks at, because they have historically had Jackson Dart ranked lower than everyone else. They have historically had Jackson Dart being drafted significantly later than everyone else did. They have him as must be their 7th quarterback. I think that everything I've heard and read says that he's the third, likely to be the 3rd quarterback taken. You don't have to like him. I'm not trying to convince anyone to like him. I was just getting a feel for where these quarterbacks are ranked. I'm going to take Jihad Campbell. I don't think he's going to be there, but I'm going to take him because if we're going to use this as it runs, that's why we're doing 2 of them and not 1, and we could do 3 in the future if it necessitates, or if it's not the most boring content you've ever consumed in your life. But I like Darian Porter, by the way, 6'4", senior cornerback. Interesting guy that it's easy to say 6'4" cornerback, that's Richard Sherman, but Richard Sherman, I believe, was also a 5th-year senior. So some experience. Okay, so this next pick, I do think the Seahawks they'll have their eye on a quarterback on day 2 for sure. If Shador Sanders were to fall to them at 50, I mean, that would be a huge red flag, obviously, that something's going on with Shador Sanders. I don't think when you're a second round pick that you really get to throw your weight around, do the Eli Manning, I'm not going to play in that city thing. I don't think that the Seahawks, I just don't even know if it's realistic to talk about it or if it's worthwhile talking about it. Oh, in this draft, so they took, the Raiders took, have the Raiders taken a quarterback in this simulation? Are all the quarterbacks still available? Yeah, I guess the next one was Dylan Gabriel, right? I'd be scared shitless at Dylan Gabriel. The only team that I would, if I was, I mean, I think Dylan Gabriel, the problem with Dylan Gabriel is, I don't think he's got NFL arm strength, and he's left-handed. I think the only place that makes sense to me for Dylan Gabriel is like he can step in and really be a complementer, I mean, I think I'm like working my way through this, but the answer I'm saying is Miami. Like backing up Tua is where he makes a lot of sense to me. Left-handed quarterback, similar skill profile, some mobility, limited arm strength, accurate passer, left-handed. Makes a ton of sense to me. Maybe he'll get drafted high enough that doesn't make sense, but like to me, Dylan Gabriel and Miami make a ton of sense. I don't want him in Seattle. Let's go down. Let's see what this list looks like. Jeffrey Bassa, I would have considered if the Seahawks hadn't just drafted Jihad Campbell. I suppose if you're in this position, you have not taken an offensive lineman yet. You have not taken a quarterback yet. While I like Trey Harris, I don't think that the Seahawks, I think they gotta make an addition. Oh, you know what I did the other day? Let's see if I can pull this off quickly. I'm going to read you I'm going to get a scouting report on ChatGPT. I did this the other day. I've tried it on Grok also. We'll see what Grok has to say, but yeah, come on now. I don't want to listen to this article. Let me use your stupid ChatGPT. All right. Give me a one paragraph scouting report on Anthony Belton. I'll read you what it says. Anthony Belton, an offensive tackle from North Carolina State, 6'5", 345 pounds, bringing a formidable presence. He possesses elite length with a wingspan of 83 1/3 inches and arms measuring over 34 1/2 inches. Belton demonstrates impressive power in the run game, effectively executing down blocks and inside zone concepts. Zone is exciting. Inside is less exciting. In pass protection, he combines patience with aggressiveness, establishing pocket depth quickly and utilizing his heavy hands to neutralize defenders. His surprising burst and agility allow him to climb to the second level efficiently, making him a versatile asset in various blocking schemes. Okay, this is the guy then. It's big. That's a big guard, but this is our guy. We're taking Anthony Belton in the third round. I thought, and that's a guy, by the way, again, the guy that I would like the Seahawks to invest in first on the offensive line. I would like to be a guy. I'm more worried about replacing Charles Cross after 2025 than I am about filling the gap at guard, is the reality. Trey Harris went to Green Bay. In Green Bay, I think Trey Harris is, going to become a number one receiver and 1,000-yard guy. Big Trey Harris guy. We'll see what the Combine has to say about some of these guys that I like. And I'm sure it'll add people to my list also. By the way, if you were a Combine guy, and I know they do this, but you should obviously go to some sort of Olympic track coach, right? To learn how to run the most efficiently. Even though that's not how you're going to run on a field, go do the best you possibly can. This is probably one of the reasons why combine speed isn't a perfect, it's truly a question of game speed versus combine speed. So Jalen Milroe just went. I think that puts us. Jackson Dart goes 106 to the Raiders. Um, I do think he will go significantly before that, but this is probably the spot where I would start considering Quinn Ewers. Is once I do think he's going to be probably in the group that's after Dart and Milroe. Although Milroe, I'm interested in Milroe. Um, I'm interested in him in a role where he could, play some packages in 2025. I also, by the way, I did hear an interesting idea, um, again on local sports radio about, I think it was Brock and Salk, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was something else about Taysom Hill following Clint Kubiak to Seattle if it gets released by New Orleans. And I think that's really interesting. Having a third quarterback on the roster has some value, but also a guy that could like play some fullback, play some tight end, play some running back, give you some kind of gadget flexibility, add some excitement, some big play capabilities to that offense. I think it's really interesting. I think I'd be interested in Milroe for the same reason in 2025, and so that he can develop into the quarterback of the future, ideally. And I'm just waiting to see. I don't think anyone's taken. I think Quinn Ewers is still available. I don't know where he's. Oh yeah, so he's ranked 138th. Average draft position is 146. Seahawks' next pick is at 172. And I guess it's just a question of, do you think that the drop off between Quinn Ewers and whoever the next quarterback that will be available is enough to justify taking him here? They have PFF has Riley Leonard higher. I'm not in love with that idea. I'm really sweating it, folks. Let's make sure we're not missing out on. Why is Riley Leonard not showing up on their all players? Oh no, there he is. Yeah, I'm stupid. So Braden Swinson, you can see this is where their draft gets like out of calibration. Braden Swinson, Dorian Strong, these are guys they've moved super far up their rankings, and typically their draft would consider that, but it's also considering average draft position, which takes time to calibrate. So I'm going to leave those guys alone for, just lack of familiarity, and also, I don't think it's going to be realistic that they're there. I think fourth round, I'm drafting Quinn Ewers. It's going to get a bad grade because Riley Leonard was there. It's going to get a bad grade probably because the LSU defensive end is there, and he's a bigger need according to this draft. I'd bet that's going to be the worst pick, is me drafting Quinn Ewers right there. But we'll see. I suppose it could be any pick, any of the last two picks, because either of the last two picks, because the system here is going to say there was a better need available at that spot. Whatever their terminology is. It's actually kind of worded weird. So yeah, what have we done? We got a tackle / guard, a nose tackle, a linebacker, a quarterback, and I think that you're going to want to get an edge earlier in this draft, but I think after this it's I think it's a free-for-all. In fact, I think the Seahawks are pretty uniquely positioned where they absolutely have needs, but their needs are everything, a little bit of everything. So, I think they need to take best player available, and a lot of people are not going to like that. I'm going to speed this up just a little bit because I don't need to talk more between picks, 136 and 172 than I did between the first two picks, for example. We can speed this up quite a bit. So the aforementioned Braden Swinson remains available here at 172. I'm going to take him because maybe I don't know what the right spot is, but we'll take Braden Swinson. Is he one of my guys? No. I'm not devoutly a Jihad Campbell or not Jihad Campbell guy. I know that he's been in that range, the fringe second rounder, and now the one thing that I will say, my one criticism of PFF is these rankings change so much from week to week That it's like, are we just doing, is this just entertainment? And maybe that is it. Maybe it is just entertainment. But what has Jihad Campbell done in the last 7 days to go from being 29th ranked to 12th ranked when nothing's going on? Are you changing these rankings so that we can all get addicted to it like we do to our Robinhood apps or to our gambling apps? Like it's all just, I will say it's like a little bit questionable. And by a little bit, I mean very questionable. But you want to draft. I think the Seahawks need an interior lineman. Obviously, I'm not breaking news. I think they still, in this draft, even if you think that Belton can play guard, I think they need another interior lineman. I'm pretty ambivalent. I think they have Christian Haynes as potentially a center. They have, obviously, Olu Oluwatimi. They have Anthony Bradford. They have Satu Lamea. I think that, like, they have organizational depth at those positions. And I think if you're going to make a swing, or if you're going to take one of those positions, I think you want to take a swing. And I like Jake Majors. I like Miles Frazier. I think they just got to take which of those guys they like more. So I don't know. I guess for the sake of it, we're going to take Miles Frazier. I don't know that I have a strong feeling about Miles Frazier versus, I mean, he's a little bit bigger, but I mean, both played super high levels of competition. Okay. Let's get back to last time we took Zeke Biggers in this draft, by the way, and he was not only not available, but we filled the nose tackle position in the first round. Again, this is like start talking about guys that you like versus guys that, let's see. This might be a time to like throw in a like a Jabbar Muhammad, although I think, I mean, I don't know. I actually don't understand. I'm surprised that Jabbar Muhammad is. I'm gonna just take a couple of my fellas here. We're taking Jabbar Muhammad here. It's gonna get an F. It's gonna get an F grade, but I like Jabbar Muhammad. Also, Huskies fans that are mad at Jabbar, didn't Jabbar Muhammad make the play that took him to the national championship game? That guy can have my firstborn, frankly. I mean, I'd rather he takes the secondborn, but do I take a second quarterback? Tyler Shuck probably doesn't get this far, but he is old. I'm not against the idea of taking a second quarterback. I guess we'll take Ethan Downs. He's like the top ranked remaining edge. Unless I find an edge that I actually recognize and like. Yeah, we'll do it. This is not going to be a well-graded draft. I can tell you that. They're not going to like the Ewers pick. They're probably not going to like the Belton pick. It says great job. That's a good-looking draft. Top 21% of Seahawks drafts? What are you Seahawks fans doing? That's probably got to get calibrated also. Okay, so that's where we ended up. We got an A on it. I don't think I've ever gotten it that high on a 7-round draft this year on a 7-round mock. Yeah, the pick it like the least was Jabbar Muhammad in the 6th, which if your worst pick is your 6th-round pick, who gives a shit? Braden Swinson in the 5th is I don't have feelings about Braden Swinson. I just was sick of seeing that name at the top of the. It seems like based on their rankings. Let's see where he is at on mock draft. On the mock draft, the database simulator. We'll get over there. You guys can see this. All right. Ooh, we're running long. I guess part of it is because Puget Sound Energy interrupted the goddamn podcast. They don't appreciate Mock Draft Monday. All right. So we'll start this. What did I set it to? Did I set it to? Well, we're running long, so we can. Oh, do we want it to? We don't want it to go this fast. Slow it on down. It's too fast. I'd like to be able to react a little bit. Cam Ward went, first? And we're again not going to do any trades. Cam Ward went first, right? And then Sanders goes 3 to the Giants. That makes sense. Raiders take Ted McMillan. I don't think that's. I think that it'll be interesting to see how much influence Pete Carroll has over personnel. Travis Hunter to the Jets is interesting. Sanders versus if that were to happen, if Shedeur Sanders goes to the Giants and Travis Hunter goes to the Jets, that's a beautiful pairing in New York. These guys could be roommates and be on opposing teams. I think that would be the NFL would have to be thrilled if that's what they got. All right. I'm never going to take Ashton Genty. There's no amount of if he was available in the third round or the second round, maybe I'd consider it if I was the Seahawks. He won't be, although I do think Ashton Genty's a guy, and I might have said this last week, a lot of miles on Ashton Genty, a lot of carries. It's in smaller conference football. I will acknowledge that, but I'd be worried about just that alone. I will be curious to see how fast he actually runs, because that's that's tough with small conference football to see a guy. He's running away from his. I know that Boise State played good teams, but yeah, you see him like running away from guys, and he seems very fast. But is it because the conference is on average just a little bit slower? Tyler Warren would be tough to pass up. I think that the Seahawks are probably out on Mike Green, who has some character concerns. I don't think they're going to draft Tyler Booker in the first round. I don't think they're going to draft a first round offensive lineman that is just a guard only. Shamar Stewart, all the traits, no production. I don't think that the Seahawks are going to draft, my opinion, going to draft a guy that doesn't necessarily. What is the reason? Is it because he doesn't care about football to improve his technique? Is it because he doesn't have technique or the ability to have good technique? I don't know. Just does not feel like a Seahawks pick to me. I love the Tyler Warren option. Colston Loveland, Kenneth Grant. If I was going to take one of these two tight ends, I guess Colston Loveland would probably complement A.J. Barner a little more, but do we go boring and take? I like Nick Scorton too. I like him actually better than I like Shamar Stewart. All right. Do we go boring or do we go? There's no tackle that's like. Unless how do they rank their tackles? I like Ariante Ursary a lot. I've talked about that a fair amount. If he's there in the second round, I'm taking Kenneth Grant again. We're going boring on boring. Got an A. Just out here getting A's. The thing about Kenneth Grant, I will say, is like a guy with that body and skill set, you're just not going to get a chance at in the second round or later. And so I do think he is kind of a one of one in this draft. Does that mean that the Seahawks need to draft him? Not necessarily. I think nose tackle is, it's a little bit of a specialized position these days. What I do think just happened, though, by the way, Gray Zabel falls to the Seahawks in the second round. Gray Zabel's a guy that's a lot of people are very excited about. Small conference, Division II guy. A lot of upside, a lot of loyalty, which people care about for some reason. In a child, essentially. He's a guy that can play. I think he can play guard. He's certainly not going to be a tackle in the NFL. So he doesn't fit the thing that I said about being able to replace Charles Cross. Maybe he can get by at right tackle, but I don't. Even in today's NFL, it almost doesn't matter because the teams are. Yeah, I just don't. I think you got to have a similar body at right tackle. I don't think Gray Zabel's a tackle, but I do think he's potentially like a Pro Bowl center or guard, but I think like if you find a guy like that can play center, I'm interested in that. Obviously, Jackson Dart's here. How do they have the quarterbacks ranked? I think the way that this is why I'm saying that this. So mock draft database, they're it's not consensus big board is like just an aggregation of what everybody's saying, and people can get group thinky, and they can start to kind of let the tail wag the dog a little bit for sure. But to me, this feels more reliable as a ranking system, which is like it doesn't pretend it's unbiased. It's just an aggregation of everybody's biases. So I'm gonna take Gray Zabel here. He got an A plus. It was well past his ranking. To me, personally, there's like I don't have as big of a gap between Jackson Dart and Quinn Ewers as a lot of people obviously do. But okay. Real quick, let's check in. We got nobody cares, nobody's chatting. Everyone hates the podcast. I just want to check because I don't have it on my screen at all when I'm doing this. So still not doing trades. I have said I do think the Seahawks need to get younger at running back. Well, they need to get healthier at running back, and that probably comes from being younger and different personnel. Josiah Stewart, I believe, also didn't play with McDonald at Michigan. I think he's also like 6'1". He's an undersized edge, and I don't think that's the kind of edge. I think the Seahawks want that like front five. I know it's people talk about the front seven, but I'm not talking about the two middle linebackers. I think they want their two edges and their three linemen or four linemen and two outside linebackers. Whatever look they're giving, I think they want those guys to all be like really close to the same size compared to other. Like to me, if you're looking at an edge for the Seahawks, I think you want that guy to be like 260 plus, probably 6'5 plus. And I think in a dream world, that guy could also like drop down and be a 3-4 end on third down or even on earlier downs to create a lot of confusion. So I don't think that a guy like Josiah Stewart makes a bunch of sense. Of all these guys, I think I like Savion Williams the most, especially by the way, if the Seahawks move on from DK Metcalf, it's going to be interesting because I think that Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to be in a role that is similar to Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp, what they did in. I know it's not the same offense, but it's actually kind of similar. I think that he's going to end up in the slot, and I think it's kind of the reason why I think even if on a small contract, I don't know that Tyler Lockett makes a lot of sense because he's so redundant to Smith-Njigba that I don't really see him seeing a ton of snaps. I'm going Savion Williams, huge target, big long arms, blah, 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 blah. He's a guy that I would be very curious to see how he runs. I'm getting good grades over here today. Last week, I was not happy with how I performed on the mock draft database simulator. Ooh, and I didn't even, by the way, just an oversight on my part, did not even consider Quinn Ewers there, and Quinn Ewers just went off the board. So this is a bad situation if you're one of the Seahawks. You'd be mad at me if I was John Schneider right now, I suspect. If you like Quinn Ewers at all. I do kind of regret taking Savion Williams now. I was simply going off of their, and I don't want Dylan Gabriel. Not interested. Stop trying to be on my team. Dylan Gabriel. Where do they have? Did he already go? Did they? No, Will Rogers is 536. That's so far down. Where did Rourke go? Curtis Rourke went already, it would appear. My question is, people that watched more Notre Dame games tell me, is Riley Leonard college fast or pro fast? Because I saw the interview that he did with Robert Griffin III, and they made it seem like he's this hyper athlete, but I'm not certain that I agree. And that's another guy that, like, if he's a 4-5 quarterback, he's an interesting guy on a team that needs to develop a quarterback because he can play some downs in circumstances and not just completely replace Sam Howell. You could keep him and Howell on the roster and not be just simply wasting a roster spot. But if he's a 4-7 guy that's more athletic than he looks, if he's a Baker Mayfield, Sam Howell type that's like doesn't actually have measurable speed but seems to find a way to run a little bit, I'm not in any of those quarterbacks. But I'm also like, the only other guy that I'm really interested in is Tyler Shuck. They have him at 160. The Seahawks don't draft again until 173. Could I be yet another Seahawks GM that refuses to draft a quarterback ever? It's possible. We're not going to take him. We're not taking him here. Can't bring myself to do it. I think these edges are exciting. I don't know that nobody's popping here, so I'm gonna draft Oluwafemi Oladejo. I think that was pretty good. I think I knocked that out of the park. We're going to draft Oladejo out of UCLA. I actually should have looked up. This is my beef with with Mock Draft Database. If you watched last week, is that you can't click and I'm pulling up on ChatGPT and Oladejo. 6'3", 261. I don't love it as much. I think they probably would draft an edge there. I suspect Oladejo might not be the guy. I did say 260 was kind of the cutoff. I think they'd like him to be a little bit bigger, but oh yeah, let's get this shit off the screen. Now we can see a little more of it. Kyle McCord is a guy that I am not excited about at all. I know some people like him a lot. I will say the fact that I waited until 173 and there's still two quarterbacks that Mock Draft Database has ranked ahead of him, I'd be fine with. I'm going to take one more non-quarterback, and we're going to draft a quarterback with this, hopefully with this next pick, and it's going to be one of those three. And I'm not super married to who it is in particular. Cody Simon. I think Cody Simon is. I think Cody Simon's who I'm gonna end up picking. Is the let's see. Did I? Cody Simon scouting report. 6'2", 235, athleticism, and blah blah blah. I think I'm taking Cody Simon. Yeah. I got an A+. I got another A+. Mom and Dad. Okay. The only quarterback left that is ranked in I really fucked myself. Riley Leonard's interesting. Like I said, I don't love the game, but he's the pick here because if you're drafting a guy that late, I think he makes sense to be the third guy and to be a guy that develops, but also if you're going to have if it's going to be that, if you're going to draft a guy that late, I'm not going to force Sam Howell off the roster for that guy. If they draft a guy in the second round, Sam Howell's gone, probably. Or if he is, you're not mad about it because you have the next guy. But if you're drafting a guy that you're not sure about, that you're not going to dump, that you're not willing to get rid of Sam Howell for, it's got to be a lot later. And if you're going to do that, yeah, I think that guy should have some complementary skills to what you need out of it. And so this Riley Leonard, let's assume the athleticism's good. We'll find out. We'll know by next week, hopefully. Although he may not run. I don't know. If he doesn't run, it might be because he's too slow to run and improve his draft stock. All right, we're back to, let's not look at quarterbacks anymore. I'm done talking about quarterbacks. I'm done looking at quarterbacks. Jake Majors. Do we take Jake Majors? No, wait, we can look. Did we take Jake Majors? No, we took Miles Frazier. We were going to look at where Frazier was ranked here. We didn't do it. And also where the dude from LSU was ranked. But we're going to take Jake Majors, I think. Let's actually take a look at the IOL options. Yeah, we're taking Jake Majors. Ooh, or do we like Jonah Monheim better? Because he's also a center. No, we're taking Jake Majors. B+. They probably thought I should take Monheim because that's how they have him ranked. And now this is we're approaching this last pick. And now let's say you're the Seahawks in this situation. You've filled interior offensive line, 2 interior offensive linemen. You've gotten a quarterback, linebackers covered, edge is covered, interior line is covered, receiver. You need, like I said last week, I think the Seahawks need to acquire a receiver in some form because Tyler Lockett's gone. Jake Bobo might not be a valuable player in any way. I think the Seahawks need to draft a quarterback, or they need to draft a receiver, or sign a moderately priced receiver. So you're in this situation. Right now we're looking at all interior offensive linemen, which I think you're done with interior offensive linemen. I mean, the database is suggesting drafting a running back. I don't think that's the worst idea in the world. That's not the worst idea I've ever heard. You haven't drafted a tight end. I think if you can get Luke Lachey here, by the way, who is, I think, coming off of a significant injury, maybe isn't super productive in 2025, but the value's there, the upside is there. I think that's interesting. That's probably where I'm leaning right now. Where do they have Jabbar Muhammad? Do they have him this far down? No, they must have had him drafted significantly earlier. Maybe we can go take a look at the rankings for just a moment, or I'll take a look at him. We can talk about him next week when we do the same exercise again. Are you enjoying it? I will take feedback. I'm willing to accept feedback. Give me comments or chats or whatever. All right, last pick is going to be Luke Lachey, and you're going to have to live with it. That's it. Now, what I'd like to see, and I don't know what they do at the end of this. I can't remember what they do, but so I get A+, 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 B+. My draft results are good. These are good draft results, but do I get to, I'm going to click away. Do I get to see the league? I can't click away. That's brutal. I want to see where everyone went. Anyways, so these are your 2 options. First draft, we took Kenneth Grant, Gray Zabel. No, shit, I'm on the other thing. First draft, we took Kenneth Grant, Jihad Campbell, Anthony Belton, Quinn Ewers, Braden Swinson, Miles Frazier, Jabbar Muhammad, and Ethan Downs for an A, top 21st percentile of all Seahawks drafts on PFF, or Kenneth Grant, Gray Zabel, Savion Williams, Oluwafemi Oladejo, Cody Simon, Riley Leonard, Jake Majors, and Luke Lachey. Which of those do you prefer? Comment below. You didn't listen this long. I know you better than you know yourself. Thank you. Come see me do stand-up comedy, by the way, CaseyMcLeanComedy.com. Show at Bickerson's Brewhouse. Should have promoted it way earlier in the show this weekend. Corey Michaelis headlining. I'll be hosting, and my buddy Barunji from Uganda, who now lives in Portland. He's featuring, and maybe he could tell me how to pronounce that UCLA edge player's name correctly. All right. Thank you guys for listening. Talk to you later this week or next week. Bye. Oh, we got to get the song. And